I'm talking with Wayne Scholler, AI9Q, the Northwestern Division testing person here for the Clark County Amateur Radio Club. Wayne, how do you go about getting on the air in ham radio?
Well, there's a simple way of doing that, and one is that you have to take a test, and you have to pass the test, and you have to receive a license, and that will get you on the air. We might start the interview with by saying who might be interested. Would you be interested? Would I be interested? Would someone else be interested? And I answered these questions myself several years ago, and I found that in our testing stations recently, the people that come to the test fall in 2 or 3 different categories. And the number one category for people coming to our radio test today seem to be young people, people that are still in school. They're taking maybe a radio class in high school or junior high school, in some cases grade school students. A lot of those people have family or friends that have been in ham radio, and now they're interested in picking up the hobby and joining in and getting on the radio. Another category, the second largest category of applicants for ham radio licenses, would be possibly senior citizens or people that have finished a career in electronics or maybe in a sales career, and suddenly they find themselves with free time and they're looking for something maybe to do with their free time, and so they get interested in radio. Many of these retirees came up through the 1940s, 1950s, pre-war, and back in radio in its heyday, radio was very popular. So now then they thought, well, maybe I'll get me a ham radio set and get on the air. Earlier years, why ham radio required knowledge of Morse code and a very large amount of technical theory. That's not the case anymore. And a little bit later we'll talk about that kind of a situation where you don't have to know the code anymore. Another group of people that come to us and taking the test would be ex-military people, people that have been in the Army, the Navy, the Marines, and they've maybe worked as a radar officer or a communications officer. And so now then they're out and maybe they're into other jobs at HP or maybe Intel or someplace of a technical job, and the ham radio fits in as a sideline or an everyday hobby for them to supplement their work. And another group of people that are starting in now are people that have been on the air as citizen band radio operators. This previously was a no license, no code type of entry into radio, two-way communications, and so there's a lot of people out there that are into CB and have been CBers, and suddenly they find that there's something more besides the one band and the limited range of frequencies that's on CB. They may be tired of the congestion and interference that CB sometimes offers, and they're looking for a way to upgrade their activity in the radio, and ham radio seems to be the next logical step.
I'll be darned. So what types of class of licenses are there for amateur radio?
Okay, there are 4 or 5 types of licenses, and the basic license is a novice license. And the novice license requires, as it always has, a basic element of rules, regulations, plus a second test of 5 words a minute code. Now right there, the 5 word a minute code stops probably 90% of the people interested in ham radio. They say, well, gee, I'd like to be a ham radio operator, but I just can't learn the code. I don't want to learn the code. It's like a foreign language. Now that's exactly what it is. It's a foreign language, and it's not difficult to learn, but it sounds very intimidating when you first find out you have to learn code. So in order to enhance the hobby, the FCC has made it possible with a new class of license called the no-code technician. Now the no-code technician is similar to the novice class license. You still have to know the basic rules, regulations, and in addition to that, instead of the code, they now give you an exam of basic electronic theory. You have to know Ohm's law and some simple DC circuits, how to put batteries in a flashlight, that sort of thing.
Right.
And so there's 2 ways of going into the ham radio using those basic 2 licenses. Then later on you can upgrade to a general license which gives you some advanced frequencies available. In other words, if you want to talk overseas and get into some long-distance shortwave, you need to upgrade into a general class license, which requires 13 words a minute code. And on beyond that, there's a highly technical advanced class license. And for the person that wants to know it all, they can get the amateur extra license. So you can start as simple as you want, and you can go to as advanced as you want in radio licensing. The basic novice license and the no-code technician license, they have the ability of operating a simple walkie-talkie on either UHF or VHF, and that is essentially that's a voice mode only. And with the walkie-talkies and the use of repeaters, many of which are in most metropolitan areas, the little 2-watt or 5-watt walkie-talkies can now go 30, 40, 50 miles and sometimes more.
Wow.
So for the average person, that's the first logical step in a ham radio. Then later on, as you advance through the other class of licenses, you can buy the bigger radios and the tall towers that you see and talk with Europe, Asia, and that sort of thing. So the thrust for our radio testing group, I'd say 90% of our people get involved in the entry levels of no-code technician licenses.
Mm-hmm. So how do you go about studying? That's the big thing I'm really worried about. How do I go about doing that?
We've all heard what ham radio has to offer, but how do we start? Well, the easiest way to start is by studying yourself. And this book is called Now You're Talking. The National Amateur Radio League, American Radio Relay League, publishes this book, and this book is available at most electronic stores. This one is published by Radio Shack, and with the American Radio Relay League's blessing, it's available at their stores, which are every place, Portland Radio in the local area. It's also available at Ham Radio Outlet. Most any radio supplier stores have this book, and this is the textbook that we use for the radio testing. Inside the book, you'll find questions, answers, description of the theory behind the questions. So you're doing more than just learning and memorizing the questions. You're learning the reasons why these questions and answers are what they are. And at the end of the book, there's a sample test. You can take that test at home and study the test on your own. And if you feel confident in it, then you can schedule a test at one of the local testing stations. There are several classes in the area from various schools. I think Evergreen School District and Battleground High School has classes from time to time, and typically they have maybe 20 people in the class, and they use this textbook in learning to pass the test. This class will go on maybe 4 to 6 weeks. At the end of that time, our testing group will go to the school, and we will spend one evening and administer the test for those people. And at the end of the session, they'll know whether they passed or failed and what they need to study on from that point on. So there's two ways of studying. One is on your own, but just by reading the book and memorizing the questions, and another one is by taking a class at school. Now, we've found that people that take the classes at schools tend to do somewhat better than the people that study on their own. And I think the reason for that might be that it is a structured environment, and you can get feedback from the instructor and from your fellow classmates to expand on the questions that you may not fully understand. So I would recommend, if you can find a class in the area, and there again, contact the local radio stores and find out, and generally they'll have a posting on their bulletin boards of when the next class sessions are and that sort of thing. So it's not a difficult thing to learn, but you certainly have to study. The questions and answers are not obvious. They're easy once you've been exposed to them, but there's a lot of memory involved in what frequencies and how much power and what you can do and what you can't do. It's basic stuff, but you still need to learn those questions and rules.
Wow. So how do I go about taking the test, and what happens if I fail it? Can I retest, and how long will I have to wait, and what all encompasses that?
Well, I don't think you'd fail the test, but we typically have about a 67 to 70% pass rate on these tests. And in some cases in the classes, it's as high as 90%. A lot of people pass the test, but the first thing you should do is, after you finish studying, check for the test dates and register for the session, if required. Now, some of the sessions that we give them at the Clark County PUD about every 3 months, and there's no registration required. All you do is show up, and we give you the test right there. Again, check with the Portland Radio HRO, and the Clark County Radio Club, the local radio club, has a hotline, and you can dial this number, 896-8909 in Vancouver, and I think it's press button 3 on the voicemail box, and they'll tell you when the next test session will be. At that point, you show up at the Clark County PUD, and you'll see anywhere from 25 to 100 people waiting in line, and it's a first come, first served basis. And so the basics of how the test is administered. As you walk in, you'll be given a folder with a number on it. And the folder with the number is your registration number. And in this case, the first person in the door gets a number 1. That's kind of obvious. Inside the folder is a set of instructions, how to take this test. And you just follow through this. There's a number inside the folder. You put the number on your shirt. It says, I'm number 1. This way the people giving the test, if they need to ask a question of the person, can find who number 1 is. A couple of forms have to be filled out. This is the information sheet. Tells who you are, where you live, where we can make contact you after the class. In case that you forgot to sign something or we've forgotten something, we know where to contact you. It also lets the test administrators determine what test elements to give you. Are you going for a novice, a no-code license? Are you going to take some code? Are you going to go for extra class license? These are some of the things they need to know in order to efficiently administer the test. In addition to the information sheet is the FCC requirement. The FCC requires a Form 610. This form is also in the packet, so you don't have to bring anything or order anything from the FCC. We've made this test very easy to take. Again, you'll fill out the top part of the form. We fill out the bottom part. The top part simply asks for your name, address, and one question as to whether or not you're going to build the tower in a swamp or in a wetlands or something like that, or if it's going to be over 200 feet and need tower lighting.
Right.
Most people say no to that question.
Right.
But I think at that point, why the rest of it's self-explanatory. And after you pass the test administrators will sign off on it down here, mark the appropriate boxes, and include the answer sheet to the FCC. Actually, it goes to the ARRL, and they will review the test sheets and forward them to the FCC if everything's in order. And I brought along with me a couple of the test booklets just to show you an idea of what the test looks like. These are actual test booklets. This is element 2. This is basic rules and regulations. This is one of, there's about 6 to 8 different tests, so the person sitting next to you will not get the same one. And when you're ready to take the test, you simply open the booklet, find an answer sheet on the inside, fill out your name, address, telephone number again, and you'll see on the right there's a group of ABCDs. Each question of the test is a multiple choice question. And as you read the question, select your answer, you go to the answer sheet and blacken in the circle of A, B, C, or D. At the conclusion of the test, the entire folder is taken back up to the test administrators, and they will grade the test, mark the number correct, and if you pass, they'll send you on to the next element, which is element 3, which works exactly the same way. It's a different color test. Again, element 2, the rules and regulations have 30 questions. Element 3A has 25 questions. And to pass the test, you simply need, I believe it's 19 out of the 25 or 22 out of the 30. It's about 75% is all you need to pass the test. Now the good news is, if you miss it by only a couple questions, we'll give you the test again. We want to help you pass the test. We'll do everything but give you the answers. So if you miss it by a couple, well, don't feel downhearted. Just let us know, and if you're close, we'll give you the test the second time around.
Wow.
And so we want to help you get into ham radio as easily as possible. So at the end of the test, you'll get a certificate, and I didn't bring one of those with me. You'll get a certificate, it's like a receipt, showing that you passed element 2, element 3A, and you're qualified for the no-code technician license. If at that time you feel like you want to go on and pass some code, then we also have a separate group at our testing station which gives the Morse code. We start at 20 words a minute for the people taking the extra class license. We come on down to 13 words a minute for the general class license, and then 5 words a minute for the novice class license. And if you add the 5 words a minute code to the technician license you already have, then you get what they call a Tech Plus, and that lets you have HF privileges. That means some shortwave privileges. You can operate voice in a mode that would allow you to talk to Europe, for example. And that is the first level that you have upgraded into the shortwave bands. You've gotten away from the VHF, UHF. Now the novice and the no-code techs, while we talk about the handy-talkies and the walkie-talkies, those are limited range. If you have a walkie-talkie and I have one, we can typically talk maybe a mile direct to each other. Beyond that, we need to go through a relay station. And we're very fortunate in Vancouver, Portland area. We have a number of repeater stations, we call them. They are nothing more than relays where your little 1-watt walkie-talkie will talk up to Mount Livingston or some other mountain, Mount Hood perhaps, and that tower will relay the signal back to a further distance. So with 1 or 2 watts, you can talk maybe 50 miles in each direction from your local location. So it's, there's some advantages. And beyond that, to get overseas, and people talk, well, I know my ham radio friend down the street has a big tower, and he talks to Europe and China and South America. I'd like to do that. Well, at that point, you need to upgrade and go into the higher class of license.
Wow. Okay. Well, say like I just got done passing my test and everything, and I've finally got my license. Are there clubs around the Portland, Vancouver area? And I'm really interested in getting into the emergency aspect. Is there stuff like that available I can get into too, using my little radio? How do I go about getting into those areas?
You bet, Brent. The walkie-talkies and ham radio is just a beginning step for all the things that are available in the world of ham radio, amateur radio. After you receive your license, or even while you're waiting for it, I might add that I forgot to mention that the FCC has all gone computer now, and so licenses, which used to take, I think last summer we were looking at 9 weeks to receive the license from the time you took the test. Now the licenses are coming back in about 2 weeks. And if you want to know your call sign, in about a week you can dial an 800 number and punch in a few keys and it'll tell you what your new call sign is. So those licenses are coming in through real fast. But in the meantime, there is a local club. There are several clubs in Portland, and one of the clubs in the Clark County Club is called the Clark County Amateur Radio Club. And there's some publications that various clubs and organizations put out that you can stay in touch with. The Clark County Radio Club has a newsletter. It's called Rocking Chair Copy. And this newsletter is published on a monthly basis, and you'll receive it maybe a week before the club meeting. And it tells you what the next meeting will be, when it's going to be, where it's going to be, and what it will be about. On the inside, typically 12 to 14 pages, I think, this issue, is a calendar showing the various events, what's happening with the club. There's the president's column for the club, several articles written by members, and pictures of local events. The Clark County Radio Club does a lot of civic activities, and we try to get pictures from all these different activities and include those in the newsletter. So they're very proud of their newsletter. Other magazines that you might be interested in staying in touch with the hobby: the American Radio Relay League issues a magazine called QST. This is available as part of your membership to the organization. This again is a monthly magazine of maybe 200 pages of magazine, and useful articles on how to build radio equipment and the new rules, regulations that are going on. Other companies which are not affiliated with them, 73 Amateur Radio Today is available at libraries and bookstores. If you're interested in some of the unique areas of amateur radio, here's a magazine called Amateur Television Quarterly. If you're interested in television, and by the way, with this novice or this no-code tech license, you will have the authority to operate your own television station at home.
Oh, wow.
Many people have a camcorder, and most everyone has a television these days. So you have 2 of the 3 items you need to get on the air with amateur television. A simple little box, which costs anywhere from $300 to $500, becomes the transmitter receiver, and you can plug the camcorder and the mic into this little box. the output of the box into a television set and an antenna, you're on the air with television. And there's a group in Portland that meets twice a week on the air, deals with amateur television. We found a lot of the school students and the young people are interested in computers these days. And the hobby is changing quickly. So with computers, now we're able to plug the computer into the radio network and send packages of messages worldwide. This is called packet radio. And this again is available for people with novice and the no-code tech license. So there's a lot of things to do. There's another book that you're interested in learning about, how to upgrade. This is the handbook for all ham radio people. It's called the ARRL, Amateur Radio's Handbook. This book contains, well, let me look in the back here, 38 chapters, and it must be 500, 800 pages of information. It's a wonderful book published by the ARRL, and this book will give you, it's virtually a course in electronics. It starts you out with the basic resistive DC circuits and takes you on up through inductance and antenna design. So it's a wonderful book that everyone should own at least one copy of. And even for the very beginners, there's another little newspaper type tabloid called Radio Fun. This is published by the people at 73, and it's made for people just now getting on the air. They just received their license, and there's a few articles in there about now what do you do? How do you upgrade? How do you build a simple 2-meter antenna? How do you get out a little bit further with your walkie-talkie? So there's a lot of things to learn in ham radio, and just getting the license is only beginning. And there's a long ways to go at that point. So get your license and upgrade. So those are the steps in getting the license, and it's not difficult.
All right. Well, very good. So could you just kind of tell us all together, once again, what is it that we need to do so that I'm interested in ham radio, and I really want to do this, but what is it that I have to do, and just kind of tell us the steps again.
There are 3 basic steps, and we've done a lot of talking here, and so to make them simple, number 1, buy the Now You're Talking book. You don't have to buy the book, but it sure makes things easier.
Yeah.
Number 1, buy this book. Number 2, take the test. Call the club hotline, 896-8909, find out when the test is, show up and take the test. Number 3, join a club. That's it.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Well, thank you, Wayne. I really appreciate
It's been my
all
pleasure.
the information. Thanks. We have a special presentation for you today at the American Radio Relay League headquarters, W1AW, in Newington, Connecticut. Murray Dow will now show us what he learned from his experience there.
I visited ARRL headquarters earlier this spring, and the first shot is of the oldest building on the premises, W1AW's transmitting. And here are the famous antennas from Newington that every amateur in the country knows because of the terrific signal that they put out. They have a museum there that takes amateur radio from the very first in the 1900s. Here is one of many executives in his office, and actually he's in charge of some of the commercial work. And here is my guide for the day, Joe Kleineman. And he's going to take me through about 20 different offices. This first office is the one of the technical division. Here's where all the testing of radio gear, including the ones that are advertised in the QST magazine, they must pass all of the tests, including those in the clean room, before you can advertise in the QST magazine. Shown here, as I mentioned before, is the clean room. It's completely shielded and enables them to do a terrific job of testing any piece of electronic gear. This is kind of a spoof. The one on the left says QRT, which means quit sending. Should have said QST. And here are the 3 buildings that's been involved with the ARRL. The one at the bottom is the latest installation. The VEC department, which is Voluntary Examiners Coordinator. And here is the people that work with all the different voluntary examiners throughout the United States.
Yeah, it used to be all in one, and that was it. And the bank of transmitters, and that was that. He finished the broadcast, and
This is a picture of Hiram Maxim, and he's the father of American Radio League. And of course, this is what I came to Newington for, and that's to operate the famous radio transmitter and receivers located at this position. And this is the #1 office. They have 3 of them, and I'm about to send QRL, which means, is this frequency busy?
Here's what's happening. Clark County Amateur Radio Club meeting for December will be on the 1st at the Bagley Center in Vancouver from 7:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. All are invited to attend. For information on the Clark County Amateur Radio Club license testing, please call 360-896-8909. Press 3 on your touch-tone phone. For more information on the Clark County Amateur Radio Club, please call 360-896-8909.